Hello, it's an honor to present to you today. My name is Yasaman Esmaili. I'm talking about a process called the From the Ground Up Community Craft and Boundaries, using mainly one project, the Hikma Religious and Secular Complex in Dandaji, Niger. I wanted to start with kind of like reviewing the meaning of sustainability as defined by United Nations, because I think usually there are so many different meanings that are offered for sustainability, and it's always a good idea to go back to think about what it actually means. It means meeting the needs of present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, which means that it's the ability to maintain or support a process over time. And this relates to many factors. I think often in the built environment, in the way that we think about design and architecture, many of these factors are looked at just by themselves, overlooking many of the other factors that are also matters. And basically, unless we have a more holistic approach, thinking about all the different goals, for example, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that are defined by the UN, we won't really achieve what the term sustainability entails. So with that in mind, I'm gonna start talking about this project, which the construction was basically finished in 2018 in Niger. It basically includes an older building which was renovated and turned to a library, which used to be a mosque, and then a newer building which is a bigger mosque for the community, and they're placed close to each other, adjacent to each other, creating more or less a cultural campus and a place for exchange. The initiation of the project started with the existing mosque, which wasn't in a very good shape and needed to be taken care of. And also it wasn't enough in terms of how big it was for the community anymore. So they had decided to tear it down and create a much bigger mosque instead. And where a mosque is built, that land is considered a sacred land, and therefore it's not an easy thing to just propose to change it to some other uses. But through a continuous community process and talking to different community members, asking them about, talking to them about the qualities of this building, the fact that it should be kept, and asking for some ideas from them, the thing that came up, or like what they proposed, was a library which would also have a religious section so that the sacred aspect would still be kept, and then of course a bigger mosque that could meet the kind of the existing needs of the community and how they needed bigger spaces. And for the library, based on the demography of the place, based on the general needs, the literacy rates, they propose ideas like having different places for workshops, for women, for children, for studying, and also for literacy classes and for different classes, bringing the community together and changing the nature of the location, which as a mosque in this particular setting in Niger, it's traditionally only used by men, but by creating another space next to it, which is more intended for children of all different ages and also women, more of a exchange and more of a center for community could happen. To design the new mosque, the main source of inspirations were looking at existing mosques around the region and also in other, historically in other parts of countries that have have had this practice, this religion. So more or less you can see here in the plans that we have studied, the final plan on the right is what we designed as the new mosque, which has 2 main spaces, thinking that, you know, similar to some of the other plans that you can see here, they could be used according to the needs. If they need more space, they could use both, or if they only needed a smaller space for smaller group, one of the spaces could be used, and kind of predicting an ability or potential for these 2 spaces to connect to each other and open up to each other, with the menorah somehow being in the middle. And what happened later on was that because there was these 2 distinct spaces, actually, even though we didn't necessarily propose it, but women took over one of the spaces and made it their own. So even though they were not traditionally going to mosque to pray, they would, you know, do it at home. It's more or less turned to a space not only for praying, but also space for gathering for women. So this wasn't something that we necessarily designed for, but I think the potential of the way the spaces were shaped created this possibility. Another very important aspect of the project from the beginning was the material considerations and what kind of materiality and process of production could be used for this building. And this was so based on another project that we had done before starting Hikma project, which was a housing project in Niamey, Niger. And in this housing project, we used the material compressed earth blocks. Compressed earth blocks, you can see it in this project, basically, you know, offer very similar properties as adobe, and they're also stronger in terms of density that they can create. So in terms of sustainability that they can offer, they're not like bricks because they're not baked. So therefore, they're much more sustainable, and yet they offer more potential for construction. And we learned, you know, from different projects in Burkina Faso and also from many different similar developments in India. And this previous project, which was about creating density by using this newer material for this region in a more economic, like, you know, keeping the budgets in check, really also gave a process in which we could test this material and work with a team to learn how to use the material and produce it, and even you know, go through different processes of detail production, using diagramming and simplified parametric diagramming to work with, you know, people who didn't have any experience using similar material or using brick type material. So I think this was very important in terms of building that level of knowledge and experience that was then transferred to Hikma project. And, you know, ideas like how the inside versus outside, the interior versus exterior of this material, how they could be finished, because in this region, there's a monsoon season when there's a lot of rain, and the material needs to be protected against rain wherever water can get to it. But on the other hand, on the interior side of things, it could stay exposed. And also, another interesting thing that happened during construction was a process of exchange between the renovation team of the library and then the team that were trained in Niamey, who came to Dandaji to work on the new mosque. And also another team, because this was the first time that we were building domes with this material, which needed other types of compressed earth blocks, smaller types. So the team that was also dedicated to that, and there was a really interesting learning process, an exchange process that happened between all these teams. And this wasn't only in terms of the compressed earth blocks as, of course, the main material, which was reinforced using concrete, but besides concrete as being the only material that maybe could be avoided in another project in order to make everything local. But all the other main materials that we use in this project are more or less from a 500-meter radius, as you can see in this image, meaning that we have different kind of woven material from natural plants that are found in the region, and we have steel, recycled metal that was formed to create different panels and different ideas for the library. These are some photos from interior of the prayers room, where you can see the compressed earth blocks are left exposed to the interior of the spaces. More or less, there is very minimum outdoor lighting coming on, because it's a very, of course, hot. We are in a very hot and arid location, so trying to keep things shaded, and even the domes themselves help with that, because as you know, half of the dome is always shaded. Therefore, they are a very good solution for such spaces, such climates. Here you can again see the in-between space and the minaret between the smaller and larger prayer rooms, and how they could be opened up and connected to each other whenever needed. So again, there is, this idea of the exchange between old and new, both in terms of materiality and in terms of use. In terms of use, this idea of bringing a library next to prayers, a space, a mosque, really relates to initial ideas of mosque. That's why the project is called Hikma, because Al-Hikma was an example of such a space where initially many of the prayers spaces, mosque spaces, and learning spaces were really grouped together. And then the same process takes it, we have been looking at materiality, application of different materials, and how they can, what kind of solutions we can create and use in the contemporary setting to also relate to and learn from how things were done before. So this is more of the exchange between the newer building and the older building. And as you can see in the section, another part of the focus was also on the, in between the two spaces, the gathering spaces, planting the local species of trees that after a while would create a much more pleasant space for gathering, management of water in, where there is such a scarcity of water. Inside the library, as I mentioned before, the panels and the metal furniture that were all produced locally to create newer spaces that could match this use, and also to kind of add more spaces. So the mezzanine level could add more and create more spaces for children to gather and to study and to do things together. And the mosque itself is used not only as a space for praying, but also really a cultural space, a space where they have different weddings, different events, and even more or less by now a landmark where people kind of knowing that, okay, now this building has become a little bit famous. Many people just stop by and to learn about it and to kind of be, I think that's very interesting that it has been able to do more than just being a mosque and to offer this idea of the campus that I was talking about. And I just wanted to mention quickly another project that I'm working on right now in order to kind of highlight this replicability of this process and how I don't think this is just a one-time thing. And it can apply to many similar areas around the world where there are so many precious knowledge and precious techniques and traditional ways of thinking that can be preserved and processed to apply to contemporary settings. These sets of projects all happen in one village called Guran, in an island called Qeshmailand in southern Iran, where there are two different UN heritages that are endangered, and there is a local co-op formed with 99 members of the village that has about 2,000 population, trying to preserve these heritages. And about, more than, I think, 16 initiatives within the last 4 or 5 years, we have been shaping with them, with the community, to start not only documenting different processes, but also thinking about how it can be applied and contemporized for this setting. That's why I think this idea of from the ground up and thinking about time and how time is such a precious thing in terms of we need enough time basically in order to learn about these processes, and in locations that there has been such stops in continuity of knowledge, it's really important to give that time. For example, we have spent a lot of time learning about how the smallest boat that every family used to have here and used to be able to build it using the palm trees, and now only maybe a few people are left who know how to do it. How is it done? Just like documenting that process. And that also relates to one of the UN heritages in this region, which is wooden boat building. That's an endangered heritage. So these videos just, show the process of building this very small boat called the Shash boat. Another process which relates more to another UN heritage is the heritage of a UNESCO geopark, and it's a mangrove forest. And as a big part of these initiatives has been about how the community can get involved more in helping to save their forests, basically, because of everything that's happening with increased levels of water, and how there's a need to control erosion and planting trees. This image shows some of these erosion patterns that has been happening within the last 20 years. And just like here, you can see the location where it's located, and below is a timeline of this 5-year process within which we have been forming many different workshops to grow plants and to create a process for the community to take part in shaping and taking care of the environment. To the right is the image of the forest after we have been planting about 80,000 new mangrove trees to really create a prototype of how this community process can change the relationship of the community and with their environments. Or another project which has been about breaking boundaries by using this ideas of boat building and traditions of wooden boat building between two locations in US and Iran, connecting master boat builders together. And most of the pieces that you see here are all made of recycled wooden boat pieces. And this is leading to a project which is the first wooden boat building and sailing museum in Iran. So all of them are pieces of the community that are coming together now. And so it's really, I think that was just a quick way to show how this process of overthinking from the ground up and taking the time to do what's needed matters a lot. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the conference.